You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant. In today's topic, we're going to be tackling something that's been coming up a ton recently, and I think it's around the fact that a lot of people are getting they're tightening the belts a little bit around overall spend. They're looking at profitability, and in comes Amazon and the fines, the chargebacks, a variety of which pop up all the time. And so just got some great friends, partners, supporters of the network over at Hawkers Club, and Hannah's on the line today. Basically kind of walk us through what's going on in this space and then how do we address it as a whole. And so there's tons of things that we're going to tackle, everything from, chargebacks, shortages, trading terms, a variety of stuff. So we're just going to kind of work our way through all the different ways that Amazon seems to want to hang on to our money as a whole. And so, and I'll kick it over to you. If you want to do a brief intro on yourself and Hawkers Club, that'd be awesome. And then we'll kind of jump into the conversation. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds great. So I'm actually super interested in this topic in particular because I started my career as an auditor at BWG. It was very interesting, and I love talking about finance all day, but it just wasn't kind of as fun to audit it as to do it. And then I got involved in e-commerce. I worked at Amazon as an in-stock manager. And then I actually realized that I could bring my two, what most people think are incredibly boring passions together and talk about both Amazon operations and finance at the same time. And that's one of the reasons we set up our own agency so that we could help brands in the way that we weren't allowed to when we were internal to Amazon, just because of kind of time constraints. We've been operating now for over 6 years, and we do everything from advertising to direct import. And this year, the finance piece quite considerably, just because, as you said, everyone's looking at their accounts and thinking, what's the best way to run my account profitably? And we've actually worked on the kind of the premise that it's not always about price increases. Sometimes there's a lot of cost saving you can do within your own account without having to even pass it on to the customer.
Yeah. Awesome. Love it. And, I want to kind of jump into, first of all, the chargeback side of things. And so if we think about it, chargebacks always come up, shortages. And the first level is, hey, I've got a really low, level. They don't seem to be worrisome to me at all. Does that mean you don't need to worry about like Amazon receivables? How should people be thinking about it? This first step. And then we can go into, okay, hey, I'm seeing very low chargebacks and shortages. Am I fine? Yes or no? And the next one is, now they're growing. I obviously have a problem. What do I do? So, let's start off on that side. Like, how do people know if they have a problem?
Mm-hmm. So we get that a lot where everyone says, well, our chargebacks are low. We have a plan for shortages, and that's awesome. And that does mean that you're halfway there. But there is a lot more that you could be doing on your account beyond that. So the key things to consider is, and this is kind of positive one, incentives. So Amazon, famously with SIOC, but also with other chargebacks, go through a process where they will offer a great incentive. And then they will say, okay, the incentive's gone, but you have to do this. And then they will say, okay, we're going to fine you if you don't do this. But what you need to do is recognize when you're at the incentive stage with Amazon and make sure that you're actually claiming them, because Amazon doesn't just automatically put them on your account. It's something that you have to go back and claim. And a lot of people don't realize that, but they're moving so fast, they don't go back and check. They just assume the incentive is going to be coming in some way. The next one is...
So it's not automatic. So
no.
Where do they go in and get this at? This is fantastic.
So that one, you have to go in and raise a ticket, actually proving your evidence, saying these are the ASINs, this is when they became SIOC, this is the amount of money I want, and then they will give it to you. But until you do that, they don't automatically apply it.
Awesome. Okay. Next up.
The next one is cost price claims. So Amazon will often do cost price claims. If you, for example, lower your cost, they will say, okay, every open PO is going to now be at lower cost. That's in your terms and conditions. But what they do that you need to keep an eye out for is they will do that on every vendor code indiscriminately. Whereas, say you might lower your cost on the pallet vendor code, they will take that cost lowering on dropship, they'll take it on direct import, they'll take it on your normal stocking vendor code. So that's something that you need to go back and reclaim because they, for once, kind of mistake the vendor codes. And that's something that a lot of people fall down on.
Yeah, I mean, this is awesome. Like my goal is, as people are taking notes during this podcast, they can go back and reclaim as much of this as possible.
Exactly. The next one is returns. So even if you don't have returns, Amazon actually has a system where they can push returns through. They'll do it slowly, unit by unit, and they'll also charge you shipping on the returns they shouldn't be sending you. So that's something that even though you weren't able to reject it because they've taken that functionality away in Vendor Central, you can wait till they charge you and then claim that back without having to return the good back to them, and you'll get that fully refunded. The next one is provisional co-op. So a lot of people will start seeing on their accounts towards the end of their agreement times, this is your provisional co-op. What it is if you don't have an agreement in place at any time, you're charged what's called a provisional rate. This can be 3 to 4 times what the rate should be. So where you might be paying a marketing allowance, MDF, of 4%, the provisional will be nearly 12%. It varies per account, but every account has these. Then,
can you walk me through really quick the provisional side? Like, this is additional? Where does this pop up at?
Amazon brought this in, or maybe 4 years ago now, and that is where if you're going back and forth with your vendor manager and your agreements time out, or for whatever reason you don't sign the new agreements, there is an underlying provisional agreement, which is what you're charged if you don't have a non-provisional agreement in place.
So if I'm a vendor and I'm going through AVNs, right, and their ask is way more than I want to give, and I've just been going back and forth. I can't get a hold of a vendor manager, and basically the old terms expire. These kick in.
Yes, they do.
Okay, so then a month later, I actually get terms in place. Can I go back and get the money back? Is it retrospective?
Yes. So you can then go back and get the money back. And it's important that you do, not only because they're much more than what your actual trading term will be, but because when your vendor manager will then go in and set up your trading terms, as you'll know, they backdate them to when your old terms ran out. So, but they don't get rid of the provisional. So you have to go in and do that. And if you don't go in and do that, you're then being charged your backdated, like actual terms, as well as the provisional terms from that period.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, how many people do you think know this? How many people like know that this actually happens? Like, does this happen quite often and people just miss it?
So this happens quite often. It happens the larger an account you become. It's actually interesting because it's tribal knowledge, in my opinion. So I often find that maybe an accountant knows it now, or maybe an accountant knew it 5 years ago. But there's often you can see it kind of cyclically in a company where they'll have some new accountants, or potentially an accountant that's new to e-commerce that won't know this. So that then you can see, oh, they forgot the provisional there, and then vice versa. And the important thing to know is that you can go back up to 3 years on these reclaims. So it's not like, oh, we've gone through it and now it's gone. You can actually go back and claim it and fix those mistakes.
For 3 years. Awesome.
The biggest one, though, that we find, this is kind of where we find a lot of the heavier chunks, and that is like of cash, and that is where Amazon has overcharged on the trading terms. And when I say trading terms, some people also call it co-op. And when I mean overcharge, what it is there's several things that can happen. So one of the most common is you'll send Amazon 100 units because they ordered 100 units. They'll charge you trading terms on 200 units. This isn't something that's systematic. It just happens at random. It's a fault in the accounting system, and that's why it happens. The second one is Amazon will say, hey, we never got these, and they won't pay you, of course. That's a shortage. That's something that most people say, hey, we've got a process for. But what they don't realize is Amazon's charging trading terms on those shortages, even though they never received the goods. And in that scenario, it's really important to reclaim because you're just then actually paying Amazon to tell you they're not going to pay you. The next one is they'll charge you.
They ship them too much, they overcharge you. You ship them too little, they overcharge you.
Yep.
All right.
The next one is they will charge you freight on your direct fulfillment. You should never be paying freight on this. No matter what your agreement is called, it's something that you shouldn't be paying, and you can reclaim it.
Because you're shipping the product, right? I mean, when you're talking direct fulfillment, you're saying somebody orders, but you're shipping it out of your warehouse. It never hit an Amazon. You never shipped it into an Amazon fulfillment center. So it doesn't matter, you pay, they pay. It doesn't matter at all your freight terms or your freight allowance. It never made that journey, right? You're drop shipping direct to consumer. So
exactly.
But is this just, they don't have the system built in to separate that out and it's just used to taking freight on everything?
It's just that it's errors in the system. So it's not going to be, and this is actually why it's so pervasive, because it's not going to be on every order. If it was on every order, everyone would spot it. It's just going to be on a few orders. And I'm not sure what causes it. Is it IT breakdown? Is it that they're kind of tables where they link everything together and the back end is weak? I'm not sure what causes it, but it's kind of, imagine you have a cashier that every few orders is slipping $1 into their pocket. You're never going to spot it if it's kind of randomized.
Yeah.
Unless you know it's happening.
But it's also interesting because I know, I spend most of my days just talking to brands. And if I talk to somebody that is direct fulfillment, they're like, oh, I won't have chargeback charges. I won't have issues with that because I'm direct fulfillment. I'm not actually shipping anything in. And that's not, so I guess this is the heads up to everybody on the direct fulfillment side. You're not going to have, shortages, right? But they still might be grabbing some money on the direct fulfillment piece.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I've, as you can imagine, been in so many different vendor central accounts, different sizes, different departments, different fulfillment types. I've never, ever found an account that didn't have these issues on. And I've even been in accounts that have been shut down for 2 out of the past 3 years. And in that 1 year, we found issues. It's the big thing with these is because it's on trading terms, which are a percentage of your revenue, you can't grow out of it. The charges never become insignificant. They grow as you grow.
Awesome. It's just, I don't know. It's not funny. It's, I don't know. I just shaking my head here because on the direct fulfillment side, I think most of the people think that they were cool. But what I'm hearing is you literally said every account has had some type of issue. Wow. What's next?
And then the last two that is the big ones to look out for is terms on direct import. So this is kind of going to get very accounting-y, but when you look at Amazon's reporting and if you trust the vendor codes they have in their reporting to show you what they've charged you, you'll be missing things because the vendor code they'll show you in the majority of their reporting is actually your parent vendor code. So if you don't look up specific POs to see if they were normal stocking POs or if they were direct import POs, you won't spot that actually sometimes you're charged terms on direct import. And that's really important to check because you're giving Amazon a preferred rate on direct import on the understanding that you're saving on trading terms.
Right.
And then
I didn't think there was going to be this many bullet points, Hannah. I didn't think there was going to be this many, but apparently we're not done.
not to depress you too much, but the last one is anyone that has a GMM agreement, so guaranteed margin agreement for Amazon, you have to make it part of your monthly schedule to check your own profitability every month, because Amazon will charge you this agreement whether or not you hit that profitability. So it's something that you need to go back and say, no, we hit it, and claim it back. It's not something that Amazon are going to say, great job, we're not charging you this month.
And it's every single month.
Again, it's not every single month. It's at random. So it's one of those things where you can't get lax on it, even though sometimes it feels like I'm spending all this time checking and Amazon's such a big company. It's at random that you'll suddenly see it pop up, and then like it popped up, it will disappear, and then it will happen again.
That's up. Yeah. I mean, you just have to stay vigilant, right?
Yep.
But isn't this exhausting?
Yes, it's exhausting. We talk about Amazon accounting on a what we call a line basis, and that is the combination of each PO with each ASIN. So if you look at it that way, which is the way we advise to look at it, you're going to be reviewing on average about 2 to 3 million rows a year for your average vendor central account.
All right. So you need tech of some kind to help you out.
Yeah, exactly. But the amount you can find justifies that. So we find on average $75,000 to $175,000 per account. And that kind of more than justifies the time to look at it. However, the average claim value we find is between $2 and $7. But all added up, time and time again, over years, is what gets it to a considerable amount.
Okay. I mean, that's it though, right? I think people get lost, even back to my brand days, was like, this was the bane of the finance team's existence, right? They would just park this stuff in the corner because of what you're talking about. And when you go line by line, you are talking $2 or $3. And then how they pay it back is a pain. I mean, you have to, anyways. Wow. Okay. So we have, when we're taking a look at, chargeback and shortages, you take a look at it. You're like, hey, actually, I look like I'm fine. Well, there's the one, hey, I got an issue. We can go tackle it. The other one is, hey, just because those look fine, that doesn't mean that you don't have to take a look at the incentives, right? That whether or not they're actually paying them or not, cost price claims, the return side, right? The provisional side. I was just making some notes here as we go. And then, basically on the trading terms, right? Overages, underages, direct fulfillment. Okay. Yeah, great.
Exactly. It's like a leaky bucket.
So when you're talking with brands, like, can you run through, everybody wants to tackle this right now. That's what it seems like. As everybody's looking to say, hey, how can I maximize profitability as things are slowing down a little bit? Budgets are getting a little tighter. What are like the most common errors that you see people making, when they're trying to go in and solve for this, right? Because this is something that people have been concerned about, but as Amazon grew rapidly over the pandemic and sales went through the roof, it's exacerbated the problem for a lot of people who didn't think they had one, but now they do. Like, are there like common mistakes you see brands making?
Yeah. So the top one is, of course, not checking it. So a lot of brands will say, we're good. And the thing is, just check and find out. Like, it's one of those things where if you do check, it's good news either way. Either you'll find out that you're right, and that's awesome, or you'll find all the money that Amazon should have paid you and you'll get it back. It's a win-win. The second part is being kind of embarrassed. Like, I know that a lot of teams are saying, oh, we should have caught this. But I always say that think about it as looking as a needle in a haystack that no one told you was there. You'd only come across it if it kind of like some amazing coincidence happened. The second one is not using the right evidence when you do claim. So there is very traditional ways to claim, and that is your proof of delivery, your own kind of internal information, screenshots from your own system. I know people get exhausted and angry and submit kind of everything. But if you don't submit exactly what Amazon's looking for, it just adds to the frustration. And that's why we emphasize focusing on as much Amazon data as possible, because Amazon can't say, hey, this data is wrong if it's a download from their own system. So it will save you time and frustration to focus on Amazon data rather than your own. The next is not following up on why claims are rejected. So oftentimes Amazon will say it's a $50,000 claim. Amazon will say, okay, we will give you $47,000. And most people are super happy. And that is great. But at the same time, it takes a few minutes to then resubmit the claim for that 3,000. And oftentimes Amazon will at least pay the vast majority of that again. So it's one of those things, don't let a claim go until it's so small you don't think it's worth claiming. The next is believing you've missed the boat after 60 days. As I mentioned, you have up to 3 years to claim back most of these charges, with the exception of chargebacks, which that is 60 days. But most people think that 60 days occurs to all charges. But you have 3 years. Don't wait longer than that, though, because then no matter how big the number is, you have signed in your terms and conditions that you're comfortable with that amount, so you won't be able to get it back.
How long does disputing claims take?
So it depends. As always with Amazon, the claims that take the longest are when they're charging you trading terms on freight or on DI or on a GMM agreement, because they have to go away and check internally. And oftentimes that comes down to the team that reviews the agreements. So that can take about 12 weeks. However, the ones where they have charged you on too many units or they've charged you on shortages, if you use Amazon data to dispute that, you can actually get it back within 7 to 14 days.
And are they pretty good about giving it back once you've proven it?
Yeah. So once you've proven it, if you use Amazon data and your calculations are correct, you will have a really high success rate. Our success rate for that is 95%. So you should expect to get back what you claim.
Yeah, I think that's an issue that people run into is on the vendor side. It's so hard to get a hold of anybody. Once you submit a claim, it goes into this crazy circle where they bounce it around to 5 different people only to send it back to the original person. And it's almost like, hey, even if we spend all the time doing this, are we even going to get it at the end of the day? And, nobody wants to be spinning their wheels. Everybody's overworked right now, especially in e-commerce. So, but if it's worth it, it's worth it. I mean, they just, time, effort, money, they have to put it up against the cost, right?
Yeah, exactly. But on that, like with these kind of claims, you do get it back. Amazon's actually pretty much like over the past few years focused and improved the team that's addressing it. So anyone that has done this a couple of years ago should give it another go with an open mind, because they will find a more robust team, unlike the ticket system, which is actually getting worse right now. So it's definitely not the ticket system.
Okay. I mean, that's good to know. If we pull a thread a little bit, I just had a note around the fulfillment method, because I was intrigued on the direct, you could hear the direct fulfillment, side of things, but also, on the fact if, when that they could actually be charging you terms on it, or freight terms. So, any other like peculiarities that are out there around, fulfillment method, that if people are saying, oh, I'm direct fulfillment, I'm DI, I'm whatever, I should be on the lookout for?
Yeah. So there is the ones that we've covered where you shouldn't be charged terms on certain fulfillment methods, which is always important to look out for. But a big one is a lot of people have started to say for the past few years, but more so recently, that they're finding massive shortages on DI. When Amazon find units in their FCs, they will attribute them to a PO, old, new, accepted, or rejected, but not necessarily the PO that they ordered those units on. And that's important because sometimes it is faster to find where Amazon have attributed those units and invoice it there, rather than to keep fighting them on the invoice, like the PO they say you didn't send the units on. So that's like what we talk about when we talk about leaning into Amazon data as much as possible, seeing this is the way Amazon views it. I will invoice this way rather than trying to force Amazon to see your point of view, because anyone that's been in it long enough knows that Amazon's never going to see your point of view.
Yeah, that's so true. But so just really quick to make sure that I understand that. So direct import, I have a bunch of units that show up. They say they don't show up. So therefore it's a shortage. And then 2 weeks later, they find the units and they're not going to go back to that one, the shortage, which maybe they've closed out, maybe not. They're going to add that to a different PO.
Yep.
And then you're looking at it saying, hey, you can't do this because it didn't show up, but they actually did show up, but they applied to the wrong PO. Just go resolve it on that side.
Yeah. So then rather than fighting with them about the shortage, just invoice them on the PO they've received the goods on.
Awesome. Saves a ton of time and hassle, right? Because they aren't
exactly. The big thing about that though is finding where it is, because I've seen them attribute units that they've just found to POs that were completely rejected, so you wouldn't know to ever invoice for them, or they were accepted and fulfilled in total 18 months ago, but suddenly they received 20 new units against it.
Got it. So interesting. Awesome. All right, cool. Any other stuff on the fulfillment side of things?
I think that's the vast majority on the fulfillment side. The only other thing is to reiterate from earlier, track any price reductions that you give Amazon, because they will take it on all vendor codes and not just the vendor code you gave the reduction on. So that's something to be really mindful of when you're doing a price reduction, but you have open POs.
Awesome. So I want to bring up just maybe it's a little, it has to do with this, but I've had people, talk about, EDI, API, transition. I mean, I was at, a large OTC pharma company, so it was all EDI. But I had people talk about how that can go awry and they think they've lost money in there. Any thoughts about on the IT side, the integrations? You think you get that set up and everything's going to be smooth, right? But I'm starting to hear these rumblings where they think there's something lost in translation there.
Yeah, exactly. So ADI, API save you money, they save you time. So that is a definite constant. But what we have noticed is that any failed transmissions between yourself and Amazon for those invoices don't always actually make it through. And that means that because you're doing it at scale, because it should be automated, brands often forget to go in and actually check that those invoices were submitted. And pretty much like any business relationship, Amazon's not going to call you and beg you to invoice for them. They're just not going to pay you. And it's important to note, as I'm sure everyone in finance knows, that you get paid on your payment terms. So your payment days, 30, 60, 90, 120, when they receive the goods or when they receive the invoice, whichever is later. So you can go back and invoice all the way back up to about 5 years at the moment if you have all the data, 3 years if you're getting the data from the Vendor Central portal. And Amazon will still pay you for those goods, but they're not going to tell you that they never received the invoice for them, and they're still going to make you wait your payment days. So it's a pretty big cash flow hit if you have, for example, a few days of EDI API outages and those invoices never get through and you find them much later.
Awesome. Is that just something that you're looking at? Again, you have to look at this all the time.
Yeah. So again, that's something that I suggest to be as automated as possible, even in your solution, because it's hundreds of POs that most people process, and it's hard to find when you have missed a PO because it's not something that's systematic. It's every few POs you'll find one. But we find it on nearly every API and EDI account that we've ever found. There's actually only been 2 where we've never found it. And that's where kind of the brand owner's been so distrustful of Amazon that they've had someone go back and check every invoice.
Yes, you when you're talking about systematic, you make me think about Amazon International. I've had a lot of questions, a lot of brands. As things slow a little bit right here in the US, they're looking to go, international. Amazon's a natural lever to pull. Or do they need to be thinking about these same, accounting irregularities, country by country? As they go outside the US, if we tackle the EU specifically? I mean, would love to hear if you have any ideas there. I know you guys are helping a ton of people international, so my guess is this pops up as well, but we'd love to hear.
Yeah, and it actually definitely pops up when we do recover trading terms overcharges. The next question is always, can you do this from my international account? And luckily we can say yes, because all vendor central accounts are the same, which is great because you can recover on them all, but they're also the same in that these same errors are occurring on every single location. The big thing to know is that the UK and Germany, I don't know why, but they're a lot slower responding. So where you might get a response in 7 to 10 days on some of the US claims, in the UK and in DE, you're going to be waiting 12 weeks. I guess it's just different teams. So that's something to note. And then the last thing I'd say kind of that's an international difference is when you are in the UK and in the EU, you need to make sure that you're submitting every invoice with the correct VAT the first time. It's very hard, almost impossible, to be honest, to get Amazon to go back and correct VAT for you that you didn't charge. But those governments will still be expecting you to pay the VAT, whether or not you collected it correctly. So if you can't get it back because you didn't charge it, it's just going to have to come off your bottom line.
Got it. Are there are there other things that we missed today, or are there like key takeaways that, things that brands should, I've taken a ton of notes and I'm going to be able to share with brands that I interact with on a daily basis, but what are things that maybe we didn't come up today, maybe we didn't tackle, that might, make an impact for brands?
Yeah. So there's 3 things that I think everybody should kind of hang up this call and do. One is don't take Amazon's word for it, especially when they send you a proactive audit claim. Always double check what they're doing. Always approach it that just because they are a bigger brand than me, just because they're Amazon, doesn't mean that their accounting is more robust than yours. The next, check that you're applying for all incentives. And then the last one, which I actually think is the most important, is to keep your accounting team informed. So whereas most of the other marketplaces, Wayfair, Walmart, they label everything pretty correctly, Amazon, because of the absolute scale of the processing and the level of automation, oftentimes it's too overwhelming for the accounting team. So it's important that they know the things to look out for. So they need to know what rebates you've agreed to. They need to know what they need to do to a GMM. A lot of the times accounting teams don't know what the trading terms actually are and where they should and shouldn't be charged because there's this disconnect, and it's the director of e-commerce that knows. That's something that they need to have kind of like a lunch and learn to make sure that your accounting team know 100% what your Amazon trading terms are. And then lastly, make sure your accounting team know what your price per vendor code per SKU is, because a lot of accounting teams, if they're uninformed, they just have to go with Amazon's word. And we can't be mad about that if no one's ever told them. So it's important to keep your accounting team as informed about Amazon as your director of e-commerce is.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I think those are great takeaways. The question that comes to mind, any one-time fixes? My guess is no. I guess no. But is there like, hey, I can immediately go and pull, there's 150 levers to pull. Are there 3 I can pull tomorrow and make a difference? Or are those levers going to revert back to their old position?
The one that you can pull that will make the biggest difference is make it where it's systematic ways that you process and check all of these things on Amazon, rather than, hey, I'm going to work really hard and reclaim this once. Like, it'll be really beneficial to your brand to reclaim a huge chunk, but it's just going to keep occurring because these are systematic issues on Amazon's side. So there's unfortunately nothing you can do except for keep an eye on them and make sure you keep getting them back.
How many of your, is this just something standard for all the clients that you have? I know you guys help out a ton of people, Amazon full account management side and paid media, everything. Is this just like a natural thing that you do for everybody?
Yeah, so this is standard for the clients that we work with. We also do it as a standalone piece. And what's interesting is a lot of CFOs and things will say to me, we have nothing wrong with our account. And I say, well, I'll buy you a beer if you're right. And I haven't bought a single one yet.
Right. Anybody that's listening, it's Hannah Blackburn at the Hawkers Club. Worth reaching out. Also following on LinkedIn, and but they're doing some great stuff. Is there what are you most excited about? And I always like to ask a couple of questions here. One is, what are you most excited about? And do you have any questions to throw back my way? I mean, I've been picking your brain for a while now, and more than happy to share on my side as well.
Yeah. So I guess I'm most excited about how Amazon is globalizing for vendor central vendors. So they're doing global DI now. They're also doing a program where they will purchase from you only in the US and they'll import it abroad for you. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing for US based brands there's been since the launch of Vendor Central. It's a huge opportunity, and it's also probably the one opportunity you're going to get to test in these marketplaces free of charge and free of risk. And
I mean, just for anybody, if you're thinking about direct import, actually I did another podcast with Hannah specifically around the whole DI program with Amazon. So might be actually worth going back and finding that one in the podcast loop as well. But that was a fantastic one as well. If you're looking to figure out how to set that up or need any help whatsoever, that was a great podcast. So I guess the other thing is, like, any questions, for me, what's top of mind for you?
Yeah, I would kind of know, like, from your perspective, because you talk to such a range of brands from every different sector, what are things people are doing kind of going into 2023 as things start to slow down, as everybody's quite nervous about the prospect of the year?
This is probably one of the top things on Amazon. So if I go through the trends, this is one of the top ones because they know they're owed this money. This isn't, I wonder if this marketing campaign is going to work. This is something where they know that money's out there. And just like you said, I think everybody knows they have money that's out there. They run up against the fact that there's people, internally, their finance teams do not want to handle this. They're not built to handle it. And even when their finance teams do have the expertise, it's literally the last thing on their list. They've got, 100 other things to do every day. And this is number 99, or this is number 101. And they end up only getting to 99. So it never gets tackled. So, I mean, thank you for being such a great partner to brands that are out there. They really love what you're doing in this space because you're helping out. The next thing is, what's really interesting is the split to DSP now. Where I've had brands that were 80-20 PPC to DSP, and now, the spend is flipped where it's probably 60-40 DSP to PPC. So DSP is really taken off on Amazon as a whole. I have a lot of people right now and finding a digital age like 3PL. A couple before this, I did one with Corey over at Da Vinci Micro Fulfillment because all the topics we get for the podcast are just coming directly from brands. Will you do it on this? Will you do one on this? Will you do one on this? And, so that is actually, finding somebody who can be a backup for, any marketplace sales across the board or direct to consumer, especially Amazon shrinking its overall warehouse side. That's been up. just going through some of the previous like podcasts because we try to stay so topical. Lifetime value of a customer has been massive. And then generative AI, it's changing so quickly. The AI landscape, that those are the big things that they're interested in, and they're interested in now because they're the hard to solve things, as you're just quickly plugging holes in the boat over the past couple of years. Now the good thing, I'd say a silver lining and things slowing down is people can take a breath and they can kind of take a step back and say, okay, I got a partner in this space, but are they the right one? And now I have time to go back. At the point in time, the first partner you find that can plug the hole, you do it because you just want to eliminate it. Now you're going back and trying to, in these areas specifically, trying to figure it out. What's died off is the retail media, right? That was a hot topic. I mean, still people are trying to solve it, but reality is, it's Amazon predominantly, and then there's a bunch of, fast followers trying to, grab at the cash. But those are probably the biggest ones. One is saving money. And that actually happens with a lot of these digital age 3PLs. You can actually save money by going with them. This chargeback, saving money. Generative AI, if you can use that to help save money on content creation costs, it's saving money. That's what it is. That's what people are focused on. It's a great question. I love answering it. Other questions? Let's see, we're almost at time here. But how about you? Oh, go ahead.
I guess my last one is, what are you most excited about in this space right now? I'm sensing AI is one of them, but is there anything else, like when it gets to saving money? Like, I think there's some exciting ways to do it, but what are you most excited about?
That's a great question. I'm most scared by AI, I would say. I don't think people realize how quickly it is changing and altering and adapting, and how much smarter it is. So that's what I'm most scared of. Interested in it for sure. For me, it is, also, I'll go back. I'll add in the AI standpoint, which is people are looking for a multi-touch attribution tool, and there's no way people can go through and crunch it. But I think we're going to get to a company that finds a way to use AI to have a multi-touch attribution, so we can actually find out, how much we can relate each percentage of the customer journey to the ads in what they've been exposed to.
That would change everything.
That would, right? Like, and then you would instantly, because everybody wants to know what to do with their paid media budgets, right? And we just had a call. I did a webinar yesterday around, like short form video and influencers and TikTok and what's going on. And, people need content, but it's like, where do I put my money? And, Facebook is stumbling a little bit for people. Actually, come full circle, OTT and CTV. There are, and this is another episode that's coming up that I'm lining up right now. So traditionally going through the trade desk and then using like a double verify to make sure that you're not just hitting a bunch of, bots and random things. You want to be very targeted. There's some OTT, CTV platforms that are going to go around the trade desk and allow you to specifically target. Like Mountain is one of them that's out there. There's a couple more that are popping up, I think are a little bit more robust, but you can literally say, I want people streaming on a Roku, BritBox channel, that bought crackers in the past month, and very specifically serve ads and just have a huge return on ad spend from a smaller spend. So with little to no fraud at all.
That's incredibly exciting.
Yeah. Think about
one of our top performing DI placements is women between the ages of 25 and 35 that live on the island of Manhattan and have an interest in dog sunglasses. So yeah, getting more specific is always good.
Right. And you can literally target that person if they've ever bought those before and only serve them, and then do lookalikes to people who did everything else but that. That is exciting. So thanks for the question. That was fantastic. And as always, Hannah, thanks for your time today. Thanks for jumping on this episode of the podcast. Incredibly helpful for the people that are listening. A great listener base, and they're always adding in new things for us to talk about. And thanks for all you do for the network. And I really appreciate you. And again, anybody interested, follow Hannah Blackburn, reach out to her at the Hawkers Club. And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks again, Hannah. This has been fun.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.